Hello, I'm Locke Meredith. I'd like to invite you to join me on the next Legal Lines where my guest is Colonel Jeff Mitchell. He's with the Louisiana National Guard, the Chaplain Service. He takes care of the whole Chaplain Service for the entire state. And he's going to talk to us about suicide and about the programs the National Guard has for the family and the soldier before they're deployed, during the deployment, and when they come home. So join us on the next Legal Lines with Colonel Jeff Mitchell.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith, and I have a Legal Lines tip for you. Remember, knowledge is power. And I want you to know if you're injured, Louisiana law grants you a variety of claims to make sure you're fully compensated. It's generally chopped up into several categories, the first being general damages. That's going to compensate you for your mental and physical pain and suffering, your scarring, disability, functional limitations, your loss of enjoyment of life. Also, it will compensate your family, frankly, for your loss of affection. It's called loss of consortium claim. Next category is specific damages. Those would be, say, for example, past and future lost wages, past and future medical expenses. You also have a claim sometimes for what's called punishment damages or punitive damages, typically only available when you're injured by a drunk party. Finally, you're entitled to legal interest from the date you file your lawsuit until you're paid and court costs. So my Legal Lines tip to you from me, Locke Meredith, make sure you know what your claims are.
This has been Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, welcome to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and again, very pleased to have back on the show Colonel Jeff Mitchell. Jeff, it's great to have you back.
Thank you, Locke. Great to see you.
I know you've been doing this 20 years, huh? Coming up in a few months.
Correct.
And 62, and they love you so much they're letting you stay a little bit longer.
We hope so.
And you know, we're talking about some serious stuff today, and the sacrifice that you and your family and all our military make for this country. I just want to tell you how much we appreciate it on behalf of my family and our state and our country, because without you guys, we wouldn't be here, and that's just the truth.
Yeah,
So
we're honored by that, and we feel it. Appreciate it.
I'm glad to hear it. All right, so tell the folks quickly, kind of a little bit about your background and what you're doing.
Well, good. Well, I've been in Baton Rouge 30 years now, and pastored at the same church for almost 25 years, and in the midst of that, 10 years into that, was approached about becoming a chaplain in the National Guard, and you know, I've been doing that now for 20 years, but after my second deployment, the National Guard was standing up a reintegration office and team and asked me to come on full time. So in 2010, I came on full time with the National Guard to work in that arena, and I'm also the senior chaplain, the state chaplain for the National Guard, which I have about 17 chaplains, actually 19 Air Guard and Army Guard chaplains that serve throughout the state.
And looking for two now, is that right?
Yeah, we have 2 vacancies, and we do have a Catholic priest, but always can use another Catholic priest, because you know 35% of our soldiers in Louisiana are Catholic. So
makes sense.
Correct.
Need a few more.
Yeah.
Tell the folks about your kind of personal experience, because you hadn't just been sitting in an office, you know, taking care of folks from afar. You've been on the ground both in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Correct.
So tell the folks about that.
Well, in 2004, when the heat was kind of on, because at that time we were shortage of chaplains. It was all our chaplains had really been deployed in the war at that time, so it was kind of, I got the voluntold call. And I knew from the state chaplain at that time it was time to step up. So I went as a battalion chaplain with the 528th Engineers out of Monroe literally for almost 12 months to the day in Kandahar, Afghanistan. So, and then came back and became the 225 Engineer Brigade Chaplain that's based in Pineville, and then 2009 as a brigade we deployed to Iraq for 10 months. So I've had those 2 experiences.
And each was about a year, as I
Correct.
Recall.
Correct.
So on your first deployment, you were counseling and helping how many folks?
Well, I was telling you yesterday, probably the battalion chaplain job is the greatest one in the Army, because you have about 500 soldiers are broken down into 4 companies of about 100 soldiers. So you get to, and in combat, you're traveling and going to be where they are.
Meaning subject to the same harm that they are, mortar rounds and the whole bit.
Correct, correct.
What you experienced.
Correct, yes.
And so 500 went to, on the second deployment, how many folks you helping?
Well, as a brigade chaplain, that's made up of about 4 battalions, so there was about 2,000 soldiers that I was responsible for, and of course I had 4 battalion chaplains underneath me, so there was, mentoring them, encouraging them, keeping them equipped, and of course, the higher you go, the more meetings you have to go just to be informed. So, that you don't get as much hands-on, and that's why I love being a battalion chaplain. But, you have to push information down, and you just have to go to a certain amount of meetings for that.
So the bottom line is, though, Jeff, it's about one chaplain to try and help 500 soldiers.
Correct.
That's quite a ratio.
Yeah,
but you were able to do it.
Correct. Yes.
That's great news.
Yes.
Of course, I know you don't take as many chaplains as you can get your hands on, but that's good news to know. Yeah. So now, in your position, you're handling how many soldiers? Did I hear you earlier tell me 22,000?
No, there's a little over 11,000 Air and Army Guardsmen in the state of Louisiana. So that's who we're talking about.
So what is the requirements for a person who is watching this show, who's getting tugged? What do they have to do to become a chaplain?
Well, we've got some great men, and we're looking for great men and women. But the qualifications are you have to have an undergrad degree and a Master Divinity degree. And preferably we'd like to have 2 years of pastoral experience, but that's not a requirement. And we also have a chaplain candidate program where we have 3 second lieutenants now in that program, where you can actually be in seminary, be in the Guard, and while you're in seminary, be drilling under a battalion chaplain, not only being a soldier, not only being a student, but actually getting mentored by a battalion chaplain. So.
Wow, and you come in as an officer because of your education?
Yeah, because of your education, become in a direct commission. If you're coming into the candidacy program, you're a second lieutenant. We just had 2 great guys that I just brought in because of their education and experience. They got a direct commission as a captain.
Wow. Okay, so a lot of opportunity there if somebody has the heart for it. All right, well, let's kind of shift gears. We kind of talked about this last time we were together, which I can't believe was 4 years ago. But I'm reading a lot still about the high suicide rate. I'm hearing between 20 to 22 people per day, up to, I think I read 30, 31 per 100,000 population, and which is double the rate of the civilian population. And so I wanted us to again talk about that issue and how you folks, the military and our government, is trying to help our military men and women who are either getting ready to go over or finally home for good deal with this.
Right.
So what do we do? Well,
every soldier lost to suicide is a great loss. I just got the statistics in today that we're losing about 10 a month to suicide. But we're fighting against that, pushing against it. We use it's called ASSIST, was Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training, which is out of Living Works in Canada, and just seeing the greatest success of just training our soldiers across the board. And we have 2 ASSIST trainers in every battalion, every company.
That's great news.
And they are, you come out of that training with competency and confidence to step in, be aware, and what we call pull a soldier out of the river of suicide onto the bank and get the help that they need.
All right, well, we'll continue this on the next segment. This is Locke Meredith for Legal Lines. My special guest, Colonel Jeff Mitchell. We'll be right back.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith with a Legal Lines tip for you. Document your claim. What do I mean? Whenever you present a claim, whether it's for injuries in an automobile collision or for a breach of contract case or a business claim, it all boils down to documentation and evidence. For example, when you go to trial, basically both sides are presenting their evidence of what they believe to be their case. For example, also, if you're involved in an automobile collision, document the event. Talk to all the parties who are involved. Get their names, address, contact information, insurance info. Talk to the witnesses on the scene. Also get their contact information. Take photographs. With the phones we all have these days, everybody can take a picture and that paints 1,000 words. So document your claim. The Legal Lines tip from me, Locke Meredith, to you is document the claim.
This has been Legal Lines Tips.
Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. Again, very pleased to have back on the show Colonel Jeff Mitchell. He is a colonel in the National Guard for basically managing the chaplain service for the entire National Guard for the state of Louisiana. Jeff, thank you again for your service and what you're doing to take care of our folks.
You're welcome.
You were talking about the ASSIST program, and I was reading the history of this. It's fascinating to me that really the antennas for suicide didn't really go up as a federal policy till the late 90s, and formal programs began in the early 2000s, and it sounds like ASSIST may be part of this. Describe what are the symptoms that what's the education, what are they taught, and then what are the symptoms they look for?
Well, we've been training soldiers for years, where loss, change of behavior, change of personality, all those things. But I think the ASSIST, again, program has, you see those signs, but a lot of times there's a question mark or a hesitation to move into somebody's life, kind of, am I going to be over my head? What's going to happen when I get into this? Mm-hmm. And again, this ASSIST program is just so valuable to train people to move in with confidence and competence and help people get to safety.
You know, I read, in my research for this show, you kind of see that these kind of signs or symptoms repeat themselves. I guess, you think about the struggles that soldiers and their families go through when they go over. Their sentinel senses are all tuned up. They're literally involved in life and death situations. And then they have additional struggles either through relationships back home or financially or whatever. And then they come back home and, you were describing symptoms, start boozing it up, maybe addiction, or get real down, depressed. And so what do the lay folks, people like me, what do we watch for and where do we go? Who do we tell?
Well, I think a key factor is how you handle pain and suffering in your life, and mainly loss. And that usually brings people to the thoughts or the feelings that, suicide is the only way out. So, one of the other programs we have, which is a big initiative now, is R3SP, which is risk reduction and suicide prevention. And we have folks now also going to what we call being master resiliency trainers, which is an institute that's going for 2 weeks, and I'm getting ready to go to Fort Polk in September to get trained to become a master resiliency trainer. So with the ASSIST equipping and helping our soldiers deal with loss and how to, it studies people from World War II across history that have gone through great times of suffering and loss, and teach them the skills to be resilient also.
And so it, I guess, helps the person process that loss, however it's manifested itself, with someone that they, I guess, trust or learn to trust.
Correct.
All right.
And Locke, we're also, partnering with the VA now. The VA is really, we're assisting them and helping them, walking hand in hand, and they're going out and actually doing trainings for local pastors in a civilian world, so that, because we're with the soldiers 2 days a month. They're out in their communities 28 days of the month, and so more people, pastors, others that have eyes on them the other 28 days. It's just training them to be aware especially with soldiers, and looking at different signs. But mainly, I think a key thing for anybody that's listening is just watching when there's loss in people's life, how they're handling that loss.
Okay. It's so interesting, the dynamics of all of it. So you consider the fact that loss could be family relationships. I know divorce rate, from what I'm reading, is higher in the military. The special ops folks I just heard was 85% of marriages don't make it through special op deployments and such. And really the military it's the separation and the trials and the struggles that it all creates. So how is the military helping the family unit, both sides, the soldier and the family left behind, dealing with this?
Well, one of the things that's been instituted is the Strong Bonds program within the military. And that is helping marriages and singles. Really, it is a curriculum across the board for married and singles that are helping them be rich and have rich relationships. And we're doing that pre-deployment. We're helping soldiers and mainly families during deployment and then afterwards. But we've got soldiers still going out the box, and we're doing pre-deployment Strong Bonds training to them, and using our experience of folks that were married or single and dealing with their family members during these years of deployment to help us say, hey, here's what you need when you're going into the box.
So real live data, folks
Correct.
Who've been there, done that.
Correct.
And so they're coming back saying, let me tell you what we went through. Y'all need to figure out something to help us deal with this. That's
Correct.
great. All right. And so the other great thing that you're describing is that y'all are anticipating the problem before the separation occurs, trying to support the family during that separation. And then when they return, even though they've retired, there's still issues because, from everything I'm reading, I don't know how a soldier doesn't come back with some type of kind of heightened sentinel senses and sense of loss, and just dealing with the struggles of nobody knowing what they've done and the sacrifices they've made, and maybe even the positions that they've held. And so it's good to hear. So is there any specific programs just for husband and wives?
Well, again, there's the Strong Bonds program.
Okay.
Actually, I'm going to New Orleans. We have Strong Bonds weekends.
So what takes place? I was about to ask you, what takes place on a Strong Bond
Well, I'm going
event?
tomorrow to New Orleans. There'll be 30 couples come in. They'll be at a nice hotel. Again, we do what's called an AAR for everything in the military, which is an after-action review, and even do those after our Strong Bonds. We've been doing them now for hundreds of couples. And the couples want as little information to understand particular deal, but really get more couple time, table time, to have time to talk about. For example, we do one of our sessions on poisonous communication and healthy communication.
Poisonous communication?
Yeah.
I'm afraid we all deal with that one.
Yeah, and helping them assess individually and as a couple what's going wrong, but then teach them very healthy communication skills. And when they get table time, talking through that.
Is that just those two people or a group of folks?
Well, we put them at a table of about 8 or 10 people with 4 other couples. So the table time helps them understand, hey, there is a new normal in the military, but we're all going through and working through the same issues. So that there's some camaraderie that helps with that.
So it boils down to relationships are maintained and developed. All right, we'll continue this on the last segment. This is Locke Meredith with Legal Lines. My guest, Colonel Jeff Mitchell. We'll be right back.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith with a Legal Lines tip for you. Document your claim. What do I mean? Whenever you present a claim, whether it's for injuries in an automobile collision or for a breach of contract case or a business claim, it all boils down to documentation and evidence. For example, when you go to trial, basically both sides are presenting their evidence of what they believe to be their case. For example, also, if you're involved in an automobile collision, document the event. Talk to all the parties who are involved. Get their names, address, contact information, insurance info. Talk to the witnesses on the scene. Also get their contact information. Take photographs. With the phones we all have these days, everybody can take a picture and that paints 1,000 words. So document your claim. The Legal Lines tip from me, Locke Meredith, to you is document the claim.
This has been Legal Lines Tips.
Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. Again, pleased to have back on the show Colonel Jeff Mitchell. He is with the National Guard in charge of the chaplains for 11,000 soldiers. Jeff, we're talking about kind of the struggles that families deal with when a soldier dedicates their life to go and protect all of us. And, you know, it's interesting. We were talking before, you know, there's may be this mindset, you know, I'm a soldier, I'm tough, I suck it up, and, you know, I don't want people to look down on me, or maybe they're going to have some fear of, I don't know, rights being taken away if they seek help. But the bottom line is, before you have access to any of these resources, you got to seek help.
Well, you know, you got to seek help, and you know, we've got a great example in so many of our leaders now, even the command sergeant major of the military. You know, these in generals coming back and in these briefings that we do, you know, talking about their own struggles. And you know, I think the biggest thing the average soldier thinks about, if I'm struggling with something, how is that going to affect my career? And the message being sent by the leadership, you know, that struggle is not weakness, it's a sign of strength. And that, you know, to even as a top leader and how war affects you, you just got to come back and be honest about that. And that's helped the atmosphere of people wanting to ask help. But, you know, looping back to what you just said, I mean, we can give all the resources in the world, but it just takes somebody who's willing to humble themselves and cry uncle and say, hey, I'm struggling and I need some help.
Well, and I mentioned to you off air that Colonel Rob Maness just said it publicly on the show I just taped with him, that he was struggling after 32 years, dropping bombs, knowing people are dying, and being in the military, seeing all the deaths that he had seen. And so it's great to know that hopefully over time this fear will dissipate of the consequences on their at least service in the military, and that they'll seek help. So once they seek the help, you've mentioned before there's this yellow ribbon event. Explain to folks what that is.
Well, unique to the National Guard, you know, when you come back from deployment, you don't have a drill till 90 days post-deployment. And one of the great things of reintegration has stood up is that the first drill, the soldiers, their spouses, their kids, their family members come to a hotel for a full weekend, and we have briefings, we do things on relationships, but every vendor that you could imagine that helps, is
it
willing
supports
to help,
the program?
helps soldiers and helps veterans, is there
Wow.
and there for 2 days. You know, we mentioned one of them, which there's many of them, but you know, specifically one military source. Again, you know, any soldier, active guard, you know, at any issue, even with their kids, educationally, getting tutors, but you know, any struggle or area, you can get 12 free sessions with, and then they link you to professional counselors that will come in on any topic, and you get 12 free sessions. They don't take notes. It's totally confidential.
Off the record.
It's off the record. And so it's those kind of things that, you know, there's, you know, we talked about the Pelican Employee Network.
That was my next question.
Yeah,
So
you know,
what support we got for soldiers coming back and they can't find a job, or they're worried they're not going to have a job when they are retiring?
Well, it used to be Heroes to Hire. They've now called it Pelican Network, Employee Network. But you know, we have 250 companies that want to hire.
Louisiana specific?
That want to hire veterans, and 230, we've got 230 great news stories or great stories of veterans who've been hired by these companies, you know, that are building and training their careers and using their military expertise, and you know, also. So that's one of many programs that are out there.
So what do you see as additional steps that, if needed, that the Guard is going to implement. And the reason I'm asking is I'd mentioned, you know, in the early 2000s, you know, there's been actual acts, law passed by Congress, and I read recently that President Trump in his budget has asked for $350 million to support these programs. How would your mission and your kind of command change or be benefited by that?
Well, you know, I think we mentioned just a little bit earlier that the Army is a great organization that it evaluates everything, and it takes those things very seriously. So, you know, having the resources, having the research, and having the backing, you know, it gives you the resources to adjust, and whatever is needed, whatever the soldiers coming back from combat in these times needs, we can research it, support it, and resource these programs to help our veterans. So, you know, and in keeping our chaplain corps at overstrength and the specialty
That was my
branches.
next question.
You know.
Would there be an increase, would you anticipate in the number of chaplains? Would that be, I guess if you had to prioritize how you would spend the money if you had it, you know, unlimited resources, where would you spend it? Your commands?
You know, we, in the specialty branches, which is medical, JAG, and chaplains, we've never been at full strength in the Louisiana National Guard, but that's a goal, is we want to be overstrength. And there are some areas and pockets in the National Guard that don't have chaplains. So if we get overstrength, I'm going to be able to send, you know, more chaplains out into those pockets of some of those soldiers that aren't covered. So, you know, I'll just say to the folks watching, you know, if you've got qualified people who have a great skill set and would be interested in the chaplaincy, please, you know, be in contact with me. We love to help people serve, not only be great pastors, but be equipped to be great soldiers too.
Last couple of questions. We've only got a couple of minutes. For a soldier sitting there right now, feeling like he's got no other options, what does he need to do right now? How would he go about seeking help?
Well, we have a chain of command down to the smallest section and platoon. So it's saying to a soldier, you know, especially in times of loss and great pain, where the thought of maybe suicide or, you know, my career is going to end if I do this, it's just stepping up and telling at the lowest level your battle buddy and getting that up the chain. And because our leaders, from section leaders to platoon sergeants to officers to commanders, are committed to, you know, we've invested in the soldier, we want to keep them, we want them to be healthy, and we want them in the fight. So I would say to them, just, you know, I've struggled, everyone struggles, step up and admit it and get the help that you need.
And it'll be there for them. You have no doubt about that whatsoever.
Correct.
Jeff, it's fantastic talking to you again about this. We're very appreciative for all that y'all do for us and our nation. Thank you for being with us today. I'm Locke Meredith of Legal Lines, and my special guest, Colonel Jeff Mitchell. Thank you for being